Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
It's good to see. Thank you. It's good to see all of you. It feels like forever. But I'm glad to be here today. Glad to talk to you guys about storytelling. For those of you who have attended any of the storytelling workshops in the last 2 years, you've seen different variations of this, workshop. Today's workshop will be very practical and hands-on. So I'm looking forward to, hearing from you and hearing your story. But let me start with, I think, the most important part. Why am I here? By the way, thank you so much, Sarika, for that introduction. Where's Sarika? Okay. Thank you so much for that, and thank you so much, everyone, for the warm welcome. So let me just start by, why am I here? Like, why am I talking to you about storytelling? As a teenager, I was, confronted by a problem in my community, and as some of you know, it was a problem of children on the streets. I was very passionate about this. I tried to do it on my own. Didn't quite work out, but through the power of storytelling, I was able to gather so much support from my community and beyond. And I just want to show you some pictures, like through the years, of some of the things that we've been able to do. But first, I want to show you this quote by Steve Jobs that says, "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda for an entire generation to come." How many of you think this is an exaggeration? Have you ever thought to yourself that the most powerful person in the world is a storyteller? Yeah. Have you? Okay, I don't want to go off track. I was going to ask you guys, who do you think the most powerful storyteller in the world today is? You want to answer? Media. The media, that's one part. That's a good one. But I don't want to go off track, but we'll come back to that. But I want to just show you some of the things that storytelling did for me, for my work. Over the years, it started with just me as a teenager. I was 15, 14. And as I learned to tell stories and tell them properly, it gathered the support of the entire community. And this was the result. It was walks. It was the first community center in the country at that scale doing that type of work. And it still goes on till today. Today, that organization I started as a teenager has impacted over 20,000 young people living on the streets, enrolled almost 300 back in school, raised over $100,000 in cash. And it's very community-led. That means a lot of things are even given in kind, including our facility. People give us those kind of things. And a lot of volunteer hours. We have about 1,000 volunteers. But this is what storytelling will do. I have a quote here that says, "A good story well told has the power to change the world. Tell yours, and who knows where it will take you." I told mine, and big media in the world follow suit. Forbes, NPR, the BBC, you name it. Media in countries that I don't speak the language told the same story, because that's what stories do. If I move on to my next slide, I want to ask you guys a question. How many of you here, by raise of hands, you believe you have a story to tell? Okay, put your hands down. How many of you believe you don't have a story to tell? Not everyone raised their hands. You guys are playing games with me. I just started this presentation. So I'm going to ask again, how many of you believe you have a story to tell? Be honest. Okay. How many of you believe you don't have a story to tell? Be honest. So, I was about to call you Bella. I see you from my peripheral. Anyways, my next question is, how many of you think you've gotten a hold of being able to tell your story? Okay, fewer hands. How many of you think you could use help with telling your story? Okay, so good audience here. Okay. Stories are what makes us human, not just metaphorically, but literally. Over the next few slides, I'm just going to talk to you about, the dynamics of storytelling, right? Storytelling is in everything. Literally every facet of your life is affected by storytelling. One of the first things that got your attention as a kid is once upon a time. When someone told you once upon a time, they got your attention, right? Sometimes even as an adult, if your friend comes and tells you, I have tea, they have your attention. You see, that's storytelling. But even much more than that, when you woke up this morning, when the whole world woke up this morning, the first thing they did was pick up their phone and went on social media scrolling. What are you looking for? You're looking for a good story. Before you had water to drink, before you brushed your teeth, before you had breakfast, before you had coffee, you picked up your phone and was scrolling through TikTok and Instagram. What were you looking for? Story. A story. That's the power of storytelling. It affects how you buy, where you go, how you go. It affects literally everything that you do. Act 1, personal storytelling. This is the part that we're going to get into together. There's a method to the madness. Not everyone is born, I don't even think storytellers are born. I think everyone is born with stories. You just have to figure out, how to do it. But the good news is the mechanics of storytelling is universal. That's the good news. The mechanics of storytelling is universal. And for you as a person, and the reason why I said personal storytelling is because storytelling takes different forms, right? It takes different forms, different shapes. It's a tool primarily. And personal storytelling is different from collective storytelling. It's different from, storytelling for change making. But why is storytelling important to you? Number one is that it helps you with your identity. A lot of people struggle even with such a fundamental thing as your identity. And that is directly tied to the story you tell yourself, the story you've been told. And the most powerful story in your life, first of all, is the story you tell yourself. That's important. That's how important stories are. It's a story you tell yourself. And I'm going to ask you a question about something, but let me just go on. Purpose is the second thing personal storytelling helps you do. Your personal purpose. It helps ground you. Without a story, it's impossible for you to be grounded. You know what purpose is? It's the word you guys use a lot at Watson. What's your why? That's what purpose is. Whatever that story is, that's at the end of that answer, what is your why, is your purpose. That's how important storytelling is. Community, that's how you connect with people, right? That's how you connect with people. That's how people can connect with you. So that's how you contribute to community, and that's how community connects with you. And finally, change. If you want to do anything significant in the world, it is impossible to do without a story. And I am not exaggerating. It is impossible to do it without a story. But what are the practical use cases for you, right? I want to get very granular. What are the practical use cases for you? Number one, giving a speech. It could be in class. Literally, the quality of stories you tell in class can determine what grade you end the class with. That's how consequential. That is how consequential storytelling is. A job or internship interview. I mean, many of you, even before I came up here, were talking about the last Impact Series workshop, and you were saying, oh, the story. Job or internship interview. The one mistake most people make is they go into an internship and think it's your resume that's going to get you the job. Now, we talk to you a lot about your resume, so I don't want to, bash your resume, but nobody cares about your resume. That's just the truth. People don't hire people because their resume is impressive. They hire people that they're able to connect with on the basis of what? Their story. Because if your resume was enough to hire you, they wouldn't need an interview. Hello? Okay. College essays. This is a big one. This is a big one. Some of you are planning to go to grad school, right? I have a good antidote for this. I think it was 2 years ago. The former Watson scholar, MC, came to me and she said, I want to apply to grad school. And I'd like you to help me with my application. I said, okay, cool. Can I see your application? And she showed me her essay for her application. And her essay looked something like this. At Lynn, I was a part of this club. I am studying this, I'm doing that. And I asked her, are you out of your mind? Like, Are you out of your freaking mind? And let me also say this. These were the schools she was applying to. She was applying to Columbia University, NYU, Rutgers University, and Stanford. These are the schools she was applying to. I told her I would never forget where I was. I was literally about to drive out of school when I saw her. I parked my car. I came out of my car. I asked her to sit down. I said, first of all, the first mistake you don't want to make with the college essay is thinking that you can impress them with what you've done. There's 1,000 more people with way more impressive accomplishments than you. Why should they pick you? I said, your silver bullet is your story. So for the first time, we sat down and we cultivated her story together. I also have to say this. There was one other school she applied to. She applied to Lynn University. And the reason why she applied to Lynn University for her master's as well was because she didn't think she was going to get into any of the schools she applied to. And she wanted to, I said, okay, well, I'm going to have a backup plan, you know. So I'm just going to apply to Lynn University. And that's what she told me. A few weeks later, when the admissions results came out, guess what schools she got accepted into? Columbia, NYU, and Rutgers. She decided where she wanted to go based on the amount of scholarship they gave her. And she practically went to Columbia for free. That's the power of a good story. Pitching an idea. People will connect to the idea that you're sharing, not because you are the, oh shoot, can you help me? People will connect with the idea you're sharing, not because it's such a novel idea. Whatever idea you think you have, someone has thought about it. And here's the other news. Someone better qualified than you, perhaps, is also trying to pitch the same idea. Why should people support you? It's a good story. So these are, don't worry, I'll find my way to where I was. These are the mechanics of pitching an idea. You have to find a way to, hook a story. And again, I'll talk about the mechanics of storytelling in a second. Building a team. People work in places, the most fulfilling places to work are places that have, a mission that people can connect to. What is that mission? It's that collective story. The quote I told you at the beginning by Steve Jobs, he was very good at this, building a team with a story. He was very good at this. I'm not going to get into that, but making friends and connecting with people, I already told you about this one. If you know anybody who doesn't like to talk to people, doesn't, share anything about themselves, do you want to be friends with that person? No, you probably think they're a weirdo, So you want to be able to, and again, there's method to the madness. I'll ask you a question. Getting through doors, this is a big one. However you interpret that, just take it as that. I don't want to get into that. Driving change, the reason why you guys are all here. Today, we won't have the time to get into driving change. Today, I want to focus on you and how storytelling can be helpful for the first three things I mentioned. I'll never saw that. What is the difference between a story and someone saying what happened to them last week, Thursday? Nope.
The story's like motivational versus something that happened like last week, just like it just happened. Like it has no correlation to what you're saying.
Very close, but I'm looking for something. Yeah?
I feel like feelings objective versus subjective. You tell a story, your point of view, where you tell other things like informational.
Informational. Well, if I tell you what happened to me last week Thursday, it can be informational, don't you think?
Like
I'll go to the back. I'll go you and then you. Yeah.
You just recall past events. As I said before, it's information, or you just have to read that up. In a story, there's some kind of information.
Did everyone hear what she said? She hit the nail on the head. Yasmina got it. Please clap for her. That's really good. The difference between a story or storytelling and just narrating something that happened is purpose. For the sake of this presentation, I call it an agenda. There has to be an agenda. Someone who just, who is just talking. You know, the people who, first of all, they just like to hear the sound of their own voice. So they have 1 million stories to tell, right? That's not storytelling. That's not storytelling, right? That has its use, right? That can make someone popular, right? It can make you popular. It can make you, you know, like have many friends. So it has some kind of, but when it comes to personal narrative and storytelling, it has to have a purpose. What's the end point, right? And listen, anything can be used as an agenda. And this very, and I want you to listen, after this, we're going to get into the practical. So I want you to listen closely. Anything, absolutely anything can be used. Absolutely anything can be used as an agenda for storytelling. If anything can be used to tell a story, if you have an agenda or a purpose. Anything. The blandest things you can think of can be made interesting if there's an agenda. Anything. I'm gonna prove this to you shortly. Do these numbers mean anything to you?
No.
They're just numbers. They're literally very bland, right? They're literally just numbers. It's literally, it could be any number, right? Like, don't even think about it too hard. It could literally be any number. It's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But I'm going to tell a story with this. I want to tell it with you. Are you willing to do that? So I want all of you to call out 9. Sorry, start, just count with me, but you say the first one and then I'll respond. Can we tell this story together? Okay, let's go.
8.
You guys have to. I'm gonna skip this slide if you give me that energy. Okay, let's try that again.
8.
2008 was the year my parents divorced.
9.
Was the age I was when I turned to gangs for a sense of belonging.
10.
It's how old my organization is.
11.
It's how long I've been working in social impact.
12.
It's how many minutes I have left to convince you of the power of the story. Knowing how to tell your story is more than just wanting to share information. It is about leaving an impression, connecting with your audience, and knowing how to find a universal experience. Your personal narrative is a combination of 2 things. Your experiences, your personal mission, and why these things matter. Why these things matter is the agenda in that moment. Does that make sense? It's the agenda in that moment. You can talk to anybody. In fact, the reason why I thought about numbers, I'll tell you. The reason why I thought about numbers was because I thought to myself, what if I was invited to a mathematics conference where people don't care about stories and they just care about numbers and they think everything is black and white? How will I get them to talk about my story? That was just one example. There are many other ways. But once you know what the agenda is and what the goal is, it is easy to now craft your story accordingly. Does that make sense? So just before I go into the next point, the next important thing to note here is that not every experience is relevant. Not every experience is relevant to a story. So even picking what story, I mean, a lot of you here have experienced so much, you've been through so much, but how do you know what story to pick and choose? Is by, first of all, setting the agenda. So if you don't develop your story, you will become an extra in someone else's. How many of you remember an anecdote I gave to this? Okay, so I see some of you is nodding your head. Okay. Now, with the personal storytelling structure, this structure is what every story universally follows. From blockbuster movies to best-selling novels to the new, there's a million things happening every day. But even for big news, the news that makes, the front page is the news that follows, is a story that follows this structure. There's a conflict or problem in relation to you or someone. Remember, we're talking about personal storytelling here, and I need you to retain this information. There's a conflict or problem. It always has to be a problem. There's literally no story that has, if a story has no problem, it's not going to make the front page. If a movie has no problem, no dilemma, no one is going to watch it. How many of you have seen those Hallmark movies? Nobody watches them.
I
Well,
do.
Oh, sorry,
I'll
sorry.
watch it.
Sorry, Melania. Sorry, Melania and Tristan. All two of you in the room that watch Hallmark. I'm sorry.
This is
Inciting moment, and I mean, I'm not trying to bash them, but you get what I mean. Like, I think Hallmark movies are nice. Are we all good now?
I get it.
I get it. Hallmark movies are nice. I think they're great.
No, you were just slandering.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Inciting moment, a notable event, a series of events, hero or villain, they have to be characters, right? As human beings, we're pulled in one direction or another, right? And the more polarizing, the better. Raw moments. But the funny thing about this, just to, stop here for a second, that's how life is.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So you don't have to make it what it's not. That's how life is. That's how your life is. Do you get what I mean? Now you just have to be able to pick what's relevant to the agenda, and that's what makes it a story. And then triumph for progress. People, like the movies that you watch, and depending on how the movie ends, like you feel terrible. You feel like you've wasted your time. How many of you ever felt like that after watching a movie?
Yeah.
I tell you what is missing. It's probably triumph for progress. If you feel like, the person maybe you were rooting for based on the story, maybe something happened to them. There's something that they say the actor never dies. You know why? If the actor dies, there's no triumph for progress. You see some of the blockbuster movies, it's almost as though the actor the protagonist was actually going to die, and then from nowhere they resurrect back again and then they win. You're like, yes. That's just, the strings of storytelling. Even though you know that that's what's going to happen, you're still looking forward to it and you're still excited about it. That's just how we're wired as human beings. Now, you have to take that and use that to your advantage. There's an example I've used before, and it's the, popular story. So I want you guys to tell me what the moment in the Cinderella story is.
Losing her slipper.
When she gets out of the attic.
Relax. I'm gonna call the moment. I'm gonna call the moment. I like that energy, but I'm gonna call the moment and then you tell me what it is, right? So can someone do me a favor? Take a picture of this slide. And then call out the moment, and then we'll go Ola, Bella, and then everyone else. Okay, everyone has it. So tell me the story. So I'll go Ola, Bella, and then I'll come to you. Tell me.
Losing her slipper.
What moment was that? Start with, okay, let me help you. Conflict or problem. So let's just go in order for a second. What was the conflict or problem?
Conflict is like when the clock strikes midnight, she has to
No.
leave. No. Okay.
What was the conflict or problem?
She couldn't go to the ball because her stepmother was evil, and then she.
No, that part, you're going too fast. Like, we need to break it down. Like, you're going too fast. I'm gonna give you another chance. What was the conflict or problem with Cinderella? The existential conflict or problem.
Stepmom.
Four. You got that. So that's number one. Number
Wasn't a
two.
real princess. And
She wasn't a real princess. I mean, that's good because that was part of her existential problem, right?
but at midnight, she becomes not a princess anymore.
So, okay, you guys are going too fast. So, conflict or problem, let's say it was that she was poor. What was the second thing? Notable event. What was the notable event in the Cinderella story? The ball. The ball. Yeah. What was the third thing? Sorry? Heroes and villains. Who are the heroes and villains in Cinderella story?
The mom is the villain,
And then the
Stepmom.
stepmom is villain.
Yeah.
And stepsisters are villains.
How what?
Cat is a villain too.
Who?
Everybody in the house is a villain. They said the cat is a villain. The stepsisters are villains. The stepmom is a villain.
The fairy godmother was the hero. Yes.
The fairy godmother. Good. Good.
Everybody else was black.
Good. Okay. What was the raw moment? Someone said it. Someone said it already. The raw moment.
When they're dancing.
The raw moment. What was the raw moment?
The slipper.
When they're dancing together.
No. The clothes.
No, putting the slipper on.
You guys are very
When she
sensitive.
got into the attic.
No.
The clock, when they mentioned.
Yes. When the clock strikes midnight. That was the moment. Because when she was dancing with him, everything was going well. But once that clock hits midnight, everything is hanging in the balance now.
Start hearing the boom boom.
You see, that's the moment where we don't know what's gonna happen. Right? And then what's the triumph for progress? We all know this. When the shoe fits. You can do this for literally any story. But what I want you to do right now is to do it for your story. So I'll pass you sheets of paper, just pass it line by line. You have a few minutes. What's the first thing you need to do when you get this sheet of paper? What's the first thing? I want to see if you guys have been listening. What's the first thing you need to do when you get your sheet of paper? If you're trying to figure out a story to tell. Nah. Someone tell me. You just said it, Joshua. The agenda. The agenda. That's the first thing you need to figure out. What's the agenda? What's the use case of the narrative you're about to work on? What's the use case for the narrative you're about to work on? The more specific you are, the better the story you will tell. The more specific you are, the better the story you will tell. Remember the example I just gave you, right? Those random numbers, I had a specific agenda in mind, and I'm going to a math conference. And I need to get these people to care about the work that I do. And I'm going to use numbers. That's how specific I got. So the more specific you are in setting your agenda,
Yeah.
the more specific, the better the story you're going to write. Has everyone got a paper? So at this point, while you're filling this form, there are two things that I want you to know. Number one is that don't think about telling it yet. Don't think about telling the story yet. At this point, I just want you to excavate. I want you to set the scenario, set the agenda. What is the agenda? What's the moment and what do you want to get out of it?
Are we telling from an experience or like our mission?
Don't think about telling it. Just set an agenda. And it could be anything. It could be you've been selected to give the keynote speech or not the keynote speech, what do you call it, the valedictorian when you graduated? Yeah, you've been selected to be the valedictorian of your class. That's the setting. That's the agenda. You're going to talk to parents and your graduating class. Then from there, figure out the rest based on what we've talked about. Yeah. But that's use that. Use that, yeah. What's the agenda? Anyone has any questions? Any questions? Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. At exactly 11:35, I'll need you to stop. I'll give you at exactly 11:35. I'll need you to stop. 11:34 actually. Don't think about telling it. Just think about the agenda. And think about what stories, and then respond to the prompts. Okay, it's time. How many of you got something decent now? Okay, I want to volunteer. Who had a really good agenda that they'd like to share? Or
Why I chose that?
that doesn't really fit into an agenda.
The reason why I came of all the other
Okay, you had the agenda. What's the agenda?
To represent my class, our experience, reflect and inspire me to.
So you're giving a speech, a keynote speech. So I'll come back to you. Who else? Bella?
The first time I gave CPR.
That's a good one. It's a very good one. I'll come back to you. I want someone else. Anyone just like to share your agenda? What were you?
I wanted to show US truly affects for people. And I wanted to do it in a third person community, kind of put
you, like you're the Puerto Rican, like going through it, rather than like I'm going through it, if that makes sense.
I see. You skipped one step, and I will come back to you because I really like to hear that. Yasmina, that's the last person. You had your hand up, yeah? I can't hear Yasmina, please, can just,
Entering new segments of the world, establishing partnerships, showing your credibility, exhibiting leadership, negotiating the crisis of the moment. So the agenda is to enter a place where you're not necessarily supposed to be, but then you try to put it.
okay. I saw somebody's hand at the back there. Do you want to share your agenda? Yeah,
No,
you're scratching it. Okay. I want to hear Bella. So walk me through the responses to the prompts.
So the first one, I said to inspire or provoke thought.
Okay.
It was kind of informational.
Okay.
And then for the second one, I said like physical danger or fear. And it started when the man fell and I was on my lunch break. I wasn't supposed to be where I was, but thank God I was, because I was the only one who knew how to give CPR.
Okay.
And then for the hero, I said myself and the other lifeguard who helped.
Okay.
And then the villains, I said the members who were reporting it. A lot of people were crowding and like reporting it. And then other characters were the family of the man.
Okay.
And they were there.
What was the turning point?
The turning point was when I was alone and I had to keep his heart beating without any like without like without an AED or without any help from like like a medical instrument. It was just myself.
Okay.
That was really,
Well,
that's when it went from bad to worse in my opinion.
so that would actually kind of be number 5, where everything is hanging in the balance. You know, so you're left alone,
Yeah.
maybe that's the turning point, and then when everything is hanging in the balance. And then what's number 6?
And then number 6 was when we got him on the AED and we shocked him twice and he got his heartbeat back. He got a pulse.
So this is really good. Now, I'm gonna ask one more person. I'm trying to be conscious of time. I might have time for one more person, but the 2 things that I want to note here, right? I want you to note that Bella is not talking about her whole life or what happened to her when she was in grade 1. The agenda allows her to focus on a specific scenario. Does that make sense? That is storytelling. And personal storytelling doesn't mean that you have to say everything about your personal life. Does that make sense? The agenda has narrowed it down. So this could be a speech that could be given. It could be given on a grad school personal essay. So the only thing the only feedback I'll give you there is the agenda had to be a little bit more specific, right? So I would have wanted you to maybe even say like, I'm writing to this grad school as to why I'm passionate about this or that. I'm giving a speech to high schoolers who are about to graduate on how they should pick their life, pick their, what they want to study in college, etc. So that's the only feedback I'll give, but that's a great personal narrative. I'm going to end this presentation with how to deliver it, because now you have the raw materials. You need to now, put it together, and that's why I said don't think about telling it in a second. Who would like to, walk me through what they did, like Bella did? Anybody? I don't want to pick someone. Anyone? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Okay. Talk to me.
What's the agenda?
Yes.
My agenda is to have people understand my life. Why?
You want people, okay, so talk to me through what the challenge is.
Challenge is that underserved students don't have mentor figures who know what they're doing or actually care enough to push them to reach their full potential.
So I'm going to push you there a little bit. You need to go into a personal challenge because we're talking about personal narrative. So you're talking about the general problem at the moment. Sorry?
My friend didn't have someone who was.
Okay, good. Who were the key characters in the story?
Well, for me and my story, we were both in the same path in our senior year of high school. I had my hero, for my big sister, who just went through the process, and my parents. And the villain for my friend was that he didn't have any, so it was himself, not believing that a dream came.
Awesome. What was the turning point for him where things shifted? Graduation.
And I went off to college
And he did.
we didn't.
What's the moment where everything is hanging in the balance?
When everything like took the real big turn is when I came back from college, and I was just excited and happy to talk about my year, and he was checking me out at the grocery store.
Okay. What's the moment of triumph or progress?
He is on his way to move out of his toxic household in his hometown, and he is now working a job that he genuinely enjoys.
And you started an organization
That does
inspired by it. Awesome. So can you clap for Ian? I thought that was great. Clap for Bella as well. And thank you for sharing. You can do this as many times as you want by just setting the agenda. And you can look through your life, your first-hand experiences, and figure out what experiences you want to highlight. Delivering the story. These are the things. So we just talked about the raw materials. Let's talk about this delivering the story real quick. I have 6 simple steps. Number 1, use a strong attention getter. Always start a story with a strong attention getter. I mean, some of you have presented, you know what that is, right? It can be a question, it can be a fact, it can be something that, evokes emotion in people. But the reason for that is because how you start really matters. It will determine whether people would spend the next 5-10 minutes listening to you. Take people on an emotional roller coaster, even if it's a sad story, even if it's a really, really sad story, you can still make people laugh, right? That polarizing nature of the experience is what makes people lean even more into the experience. Number 3, what are the details? You need to go into the details. Capture the moment where you walked into the grocery store for Ian. Capture the moment where, Bella, you realize you're alone and someone's heart is not beating. What if he dies? What was going through your mind? What are the details? Number 4, build out your characters. Like, let's get to meet. You see this even in movies, right? One character is killed and it's like nothing. One character is killed and it really touches you. You know what the difference is? The character that really touches you when they die is that they were built, you felt like you got the opportunity to get to know them. Does that make sense? So if something terrible happens in your story and someone didn't get to know the character, it doesn't have any effect, right? You might as well let that character out. Paint a vivid picture, take us there, take us to that moment. Number 6, be vulnerable, use it as a weapon. People are usually afraid of being vulnerable, but that's a weapon because when you are vulnerable, you are making an invitation to your audience to be vulnerable with you. And that's in the delivery of whatever story you're trying to tell. Number 7, which in your delivery is the whole agenda in the first place, is what is your call to action? If you're writing a college essay, your story has to lead up to the point of this is why I'm the best candidate for this school and for this scholarship. If you're giving a speech to whatever end that speech is, your story has to, this has to be the boiling point. It's like when, maybe you're boiling something and then it boils over. That's your call to action. Does that make sense? Because this whole time your audience is, almost feeling like, what can I do? How can I help? So it's like after you talk about what you're doing, then you say, this is how you make sure. What's your friend's name? Sorry? Songha.
Yeah.
This is how we make sure Songha, we don't have any more Songhas in the world. Join me on my mission to create more opportunities for young men and women. So that's the point of storytelling. It's a pleasure talking to you. My name is James Okina. Thank you for this opportunity. I think we have time for one question. I'll take one question if anyone has any questions. Any questions? Okay, thank you so much for your time. I also like to thank the team.